Hello and welcome to the Uptick podcast, a series of conversations hosted by me, Minna Dandas, and the artists, curators and creatives shaping South Africa's rapidly evolving art world. It really is an extraordinary level of creative activity happening in this country right now, and the Uptick exists to amplify these voices and stories, connecting them to the wider audience they most certainly deserve. You may or may not have seen me on Instagram running from gallery to artist studio to art fair, interviewing artists and creatives for a series of short 90-second reels about their practice. This podcast is an extension of those interviews, an inside guide to one of the world's most exciting art ecosystems, where we get to sit down and really get to know the people behind the work. Today's conversation matters more than most. Many will be familiar with the fact that Cape Town's creative community is dealing with a serious imbalance of power, an exploding number of artists and nowhere near enough galleries to support them. And it's in this gap where these young emerging artists are getting exploited. The good news is, however, the city is also full of generous, art-loving individuals and collectives working to close that gap. And one of them is none other than Igshaan Adams. Adams is arguably one of South Africa's most internationally celebrated artists. His large-scale, hand-woven tapestries have taken him to the Hayward Gallery in London, Hepworth Wakefield, Biennales in Venice, Sao Paulo, Saudi Arabia, the list goes on and on and on. But what strikes me most every time I speak to him is his resolute, steadfast commitment to his community. In light of his notable success as an artist, he's relentlessly seeking out ways to uplift those around him, hiring his friends and family as part of his studio team, and as we get into today, building a fully funded project space where emerging artists can explore their practice freely while learning what a healthy gallery relationship should look like in practice. He really is one of the most remarkable individuals. He's an opportunity creator, and I'm so grateful to him for sharing his wisdom on what couldn't be a more pressing topic. Thank you so much for having me back in your space.
My pleasure.
Again.
Nice
I'm
to have
very
you.
grateful. And maybe we could start with you telling me where we are right now and about Breakroom and your studio.
Sure. Well, we are in Woodstock in Cape Town in my studio. Breakroom, at what you refer to as part of my studio. I've dedicated a section of my studio to Breakroom as a project space. And so within Breakroom, we hope to have this. Look, to be honest with you, we started Breakroom intentionally not having a very clear idea of what its role or function would be as a project space, but giving ourselves those initial 2 years to figure it out, and through engaging the community and these young artists trying to figure out what it needs to be in order to be of service in some way, because we recognize that there are all these issues around us in terms of relationships between artists and galleries, and artists not fully understanding what that relationship should look like, what to look out for. Or there's of course in art school such a focus on the practice of things, but never on how one actually builds a career and builds a practice.
It's a big gap.
Yes.
In the ladder.
Completely. And for me, I had to figure it out. But in my situation, I think I was lucky also that the gallery that I was figuring it out with was also figuring it out, because they were also a young gallery. I started with them the moment they became commercial. And so there was a lot of mistakes initially that we made, and this is how we learned what is best practice.
Yes.
And what to look out for once I started relationships with other more international galleries.
Yeah. Okay, so looking back at this time, so this is when you first met Blank Projects, and they were a project space termed commercial space.
Yes.
But before that, you were with Greatmore.
I was with Greatmore. Greatmore was more of a subsidized studio space. So Greatmore was the only space in all of Cape Town where artists like myself, who came from a more poor background, who couldn't really find their way in, because of course we understand, within that early process can be so difficult if you don't have financial backing or support in any way. So Greatmore was that space where we would get subsidized studio spaces. I mean, next to nothing. I used to pay 300 Rand per month for my studio rental.
Wow.
We were a collective of some of us sharing studios. There was also an exhibition space in the back and Greatmore was also the home of the Tupelo workshop, which was part of this international network of workshops where the idea of Tupelo was, it's something we can talk about too, but Tupelo was a big reason I ended up where I ended up. And there's actually a drawing over there on the floor that I made in that very first Tupelo I did.
Oh, wow.
Back in 2008. 2007.
2007.
2007.
So at that time, were there no other real project spaces or opportunities for emerging artists to figure things out, as we say?
No.
It was very few and far
No.
between.
Yes, there was the important spaces. I think the AVA was quite an important space. I feel like every artist has had their first shows at the AVA, and then there was Greatmore. Greatmore was the only space I can think of. There wasn't project spaces. When Blank opened up a project space, I think that was maybe one of the first.
So it was a real gap. And also, just to break this down for people who might not know, how would we define a project space compared to a gallery?
Yes, well, a gallery ultimately is a business. A gallery exists to make money. They sell and trade work and artworks both on the primary and secondary markets, and they make profit. A project space is also an exhibition space. For a gallery, part of that is an exhibition space. But the gallery is also essentially gets the commission that they get from the artist as their payment for helping them strategize and build a career. I think this is an important point to make, that a gallery has no entitlement. They're not entitled to all of your works or any of the works unless you say so. So if you decide you want to give this gallery this work on consignment or to sell, then that's your decision. There's no entitlement to everything you make that they should have first dibs.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. You absolutely can decide. I can give the galleries one work every year and keep everything else in the studio and not release it. It's completely up to me which works I release, how many I release per year. And it's incredibly important to control that,
Is that common practice amongst all artists? It should be, you're saying, emerging artists and established.
Well, I think unless you know that, you're just going to fall in the trap of thinking that you are starting this relationship with the gallery, or you've established a relationship with the gallery, and they have the right to everything you make, and they come and say, I want this, I want this, I want this. No. If you feel you don't want to let this work go, or you've made a body of work and one or two of those works will be kept for your own collection, then absolutely, I highly recommend.
So you have more autonomy and sway in this relationship than one might assume.
Yes, and like I said, there is no entitlement. The relationship is not based on an entitlement that you are now, signed on to this gallery, that they automatically entitled to 50% of your work. That number can be negotiated, first of all. And secondly, that 50% is payment for you to do your job and to sit with the artist and strategize what's going to happen for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of how are we going to build your career? What is the best case scenario? What are we going to attempt? How do you use international art fairs as a way to reach this international
So it's a much more engaged relationship than many might assume. It's not just a platform for you to show work and sell work. It's a partnership of exploration, which I think, and maybe a lot of people aren't super familiar with that.
And it has to be a partnership, just like I've often spoken about Jonathan, as my first wife. I mean, jokingly, of course, but the truth is, it is absolutely very similar, the relationship. It is that personal, that relationship between a gallerist and an artist. And beyond that, I know artists who spend time with their gallerists in the most personal of environments with their families and on holiday. There's a different type of relationship between a gallery and an artist that becomes super, super personal, especially your first gallery, and so I think the things I would look out for is the same kind of things I looked out for when I met my own life partner, the kind of qualities I wanted in a person.
I think it's also so good to advocate this idea of, again, autonomy and being an artist who can have a say in what they're looking for with the galleries. I think my interpretation looking at the South African art landscape is there's so many emerging artists, but there's not enough galleries to keep it in sway. So I think artists, if they do want to be represented by a gallery, which seems like the logical thing when you finish art school, it's what you want to do. If a gallery approaches you, you're quick to accept and you want to get involved, and I think hearing that you actually need to...
That's where we get into problems. Because there's almost a sense of gratitude for the opportunity, which fair enough, of course we're human, and I equally feel grateful when I have these big opportunities. But I do have to have conversations with myself and say, look, I'm grateful, sure, but there's also a reason why a gallery would approach you, because something you've already laid out, you've already made a contribution. I guess my point is only that when they invite you for a show, they're not doing you a favor. This is not about a favor and now I owe them. If you're an artist whose work they are not interested in and they don't really care too much, or it's not something for them, then if then they invite you and do a show with you, maybe you can be grateful because they took a risk on you and there's a different dynamic. But typically, they come to you because there's something they see and there's a potential there that will benefit them also long term. It goes both ways. I think often, and I'm just kind of talking for myself initially, there was this naivety, this kind of childlike excitement for opportunities, for be able to do what I love to do and to share that on a platform. And because of those emotions, maybe I didn't really make certain decisions I should have at the beginning, because I was too caught up in this feeling, excitement, gratitude, whatever it might be. But there's people will take advantage of that, unfortunately. And we know that does happen around us.
Yes. So we must be very careful and spread more positive news.
Absolutely, of course. And there are some really good galleries too who's doing it for the right reason. I personally just think, like, if you take the art out of it and you're just dealing with an individual, I would look at the reputation. When I've engaged new galleries who's looking to work with me in this more committed way, then I certainly go out and ask other people who has worked with them about their reputation, so I know what I'm getting into.
Reputation is currency.
Absolutely, and I do my research. I'm not going to just go into a relationship because of what I think I know about them or what this kind of perception of the name of the gallery is. I would rather just kind of know who I am dealing with from an individual basis. Even if you're the best gallery in the world, I would prefer, I would probably still say no if I felt like there's the individual I'm not sure of, that there's certainly a lot of galleries and people who just simply love art and they love putting together exhibitions.
Yes. I think that does shine through with a lot of the galleries that I can think of that work in and around the space in South Africa. You can really feel the ones that have that true intention for the love of art.
You see it in the booths they put together at art fairs and the shows, the programming, whatever. There's a sense that this is not just about money.
No, it's very important. Which takes us back to the project space idea of the difference between a project space and a commercial space, which is driven by the love of art, we hope, but it is also commercially focused. And then speaking with project spaces.
But for us, Breakroom is not commercial.
No, but that's what I'm thinking. Yes. Breakroom, on the flip side of that, is being a space where artists can explore, learn, test the waters, and it not be commercially driven.
That's what we hope for. Of course, there are also other ways of doing a project space. I know that many project spaces, in fact, they partially would rely on funding. We think about internationally, it would be often funded by the government or some private institution. And then partially also still make sales and an agreement with the artist that they kind of pay for this residency with a work. So what if you make a body of work, then one of those works would be left behind. The project space itself then continues. They then accumulate this body of work and they maybe trade it and find ways to exist financially so that they don't have to rely completely on sales, and it can still focus on exploration, experimentation, and trying things that could possibly fail, which is the most important thing. In Breakroom, my first thing to people I say is we have to do something you've not done before.
Okay.
We have to try something. There has to be a risk of failing.
Okay.
Like the worst thing, I think for me, if I look back and all the shows we've done has always just been really strong and well curated, I feel like that would be a fail because where's the risk and when did we ever take a risk big enough to fail? There should be bad art too.
And how are we defining failure in this context of making art?
Unresolved.
Okay.
Right? It's not fully where it could be or needs to be, or maybe it's an idea that was killed in some way, but we're kind of making the wrong decisions in the process, or maybe it had life at some point and it died and it failed in the end. I would much rather that, knowing something was tried out, because even in the process, of course, new things will happen. A lot of those things will stay with you, and in the next cycle you can go and test out things and pull from what had worked in that process. This is important because we want the young artists to take a step forward and not just do what has worked in the past,
because there's no growth.
There's nothing there. There's nothing for us, and we're in a privileged position that we don't rely on funding from everybody. It is completely funded by the studio, and we don't ask anything of the artist. We don't want the work from them. If we do buy a work, I will pay full price. We pay them a small artist fee. It's not major, but it's still a way to say, I know you still have rent to pay. You're going to engage in this process for a few months, for a month or so. So this money is hopefully towards, and we will pay for production and things like that.
That's amazing. I mean, I am not an artist myself, but I can imagine if I was an emerging artist, that opportunity of someone basically coming open arms with help and support when people feel sort of lost and not knowing where to take the next steps, like that's invaluable.
But that's what it should be, I think. And I'm hoping that through us doing it this way, people also realize what it could be or should be, that they don't accept less than that from other people who's offering them the world and talk a big game, and then in the end it's all about taking from them, yeah, we'll give you this, and there's this big production, but in the end, when everything's said and done, they try and claw back the money or say, oh, you owe us, we need this work to stay, to cover, whatever it might be. There's a lot of people, there is around us in our environment something like this going on.
Yes.
That I'm aware of. So I guess I am also trying to show people that this is how it should be if you're dealing with people with the right kind of intentions.
Yes, so it's all about intentions. And Breakroom was founded, was it in 2024?
We moved in year 2024.
Okay, so it's recent. How would you see its role in the wider landscape in South Africa or Cape Town at that time in 2024? Because you were obviously part of a project space. Was it in the 1998 you joined Greatmore?
No,
or
2000.
Greatmore started in 1998. I think I've got 1998 in my head from somewhere. But
it could have, but yeah. I got to Breakroom. I had a space there around 2008. 2010 to 2014.
Gosh, I did not mean to age you so much like that.
That's okay.
10-year jump. Okay, so you started that in 2010, and then Breakroom is 14 years later in 2014. Yeah. And how would you see the landscape as having shifted? Because we obviously still need spaces like this.
Yeah.
But do we see, are there more?
There is definitely. There's more attempts at project spaces, but funding is difficult, Of course, it needs money. And the moment you start having a project space, that's why so many start and fail. And
I see.
There's quite a few that has kind of come and gone over the years.
Have its time, and then they
have a time. Another thing that happens, of course, is also that it will start as a project space similar to Blank, where it becomes then more of a commercial space, because through the process of being a project space, it might establish a collector base that it can build a more commercial venture on. Yeah.
And I guess it's not a bad thing for it to turn into
is that your intention, and that's kind of where you're headed? I have no intention of becoming a gallerist. I'm still an artist. I guess I'm keenly aware that one doesn't operate, my environment is important to how it feeds me. I would much prefer this environment, this kind of that I find myself in, to have better institutions, better places, better characters in the way they behave.
Yes. And that, I guess, maybe leads into my next question is, how do you find the artists who then participate in Breakroom, or do they find you?
No, though they both. Like if I look at social media and go to exhibitions, or also Monique, who kind of runs Breakroom with me, we go and see shows, or people will send us proposals. People just kind of engage us, and we say, send a proposal, we'll have a look at it. There's no guarantee. If it is someone that I feel I can see how I can be of use, so that doesn't always happen. Sometimes I'm not sure, or I don't know if I'm the right person, and I might not engage those proposals. I also try to not bite off more than I can chew.
That's very wise.
So we don't want to do...
definitely learn at the moment. Biting off too much.
Comes with age.
Well, I definitely remember when I came and saw Boichi's residency. He was only working for a week, was it? And then he showed for a week. So they're tight. I mean, is that normal for Breakroom, or is that a...
There's no rules of like that. We still seeing what is best to help the individual. Like today, I engaged an artist, and I thought the best way is to not have a public exhibition opening. We put up the exhibition. We'll do a photography, we'll do a PDF, we'll do text and writing and everything, but the public won't be invited for the show. It will only be whoever the artist hand select, because she's more keen on engaging the galleries
Yeah.
So she will invite the galleries that she's hoping to work with. Because the problem is also, of course, being a young artist, you can't just send a portfolio to a commercial gallery if that's what you are wanting. And so Breakroom is the perfect space for us to put together a show and not outside the studio, and then invite these galleries on a one-on-one engage with the artist.
Again, I guess that also highlights, because you said you can't send your portfolio. Is that because it's...
Well, no one's going to take it seriously.
It's not going to land.
That's not how it happens. Most artists who end up working with the galleries are the ones who approach you. And so what do you do when you're an artist sitting at home and no one's approaching you? You can't just sit and wait. But then doing the chasing is typically doesn't lead anywhere.
Okay, I see.
So
it's creating the space for the personal engagement to happen.
I think Breakroom is perfect for that. You have a space, there's an exhibition. If the gallery says, I'd rather not, I just want to come see the show, they can do that. They can speak to the artist.
No expectations.
No expectation. And they can hopefully see, the potential for a relationship with that artist is what we would hope to do. So we can do that with Boichi. He had a show that just opened in Joburg.
Yes.
He was just kind of in the space of frustration, needing to push through. And I said, well, nothing was planned. I think we went to go do a studio visit on a Friday or something. And then the next Monday or a week later, he was in the studio playing around with things. And we just set it up for him the way he requested.
How about it? Go crazy.
And again, the idea was he's known for these kind of skeletal figures, and I asked him not to do that and just to stick to mark making and abstractions, or at least try something and see if there's something else that can emerge. You can always go back, or you incorporate this new thing into what exists. But I needed to see something new.
To push the boundaries.
To explore, to find something.
And can we talk a bit about that in your practice?
Sure.
With you pushing the boundaries, how do you navigate? Because I saw your studio now, there is so much going on in there. How do you navigate that? Or if you have your established famous works that we all know, but then how do you find a way to...
I think I learned early on to stop making the works even if it's commercially successful. That was the first lesson I learned, that in the middle of things selling well, I would stop and pivot to a new body of work or explore other ideas and give myself a period. And even if there was, and which has happened many times, where there's a list of collectors waiting on a particular body of work, and we would stop it because I knew I'm also just human, and it is human nature to want to please or to want to make the thing that had worked in the past. Or if there's a collector that is a big museum and oh my god, I want to be in that collection, that feeling might influence how I make or what I make, and so those things I learned early on. So I knew that allowing those things to influence those decisions I make in terms of what I make is not going to lead to something. Longevity was the point. That it takes away that potential for having a longer...
How did you realize that? Was this through a mental figure? Was it through a mistake? If you said you did it when you were younger, I'm just wondering because I think the instinct...
I had a mentor, but I had a mentor on a spiritual level, and I think the things she taught me kind of became my own internal kind of platform. You need to know what you stand for and who you are. And I spent 4 years with this spiritual Sufi master teacher, this older woman who helped me figure those things out. So I think I have to credit her for giving me that kind of sense of internal stability, that if I need to go back to Bonteheuwel, if all the money, all these things are taken away from me, I won't.
Yes.
I'd rather do that than compromise and make for money use people or do what other, there's all this political stuff going on, and everyone always pulling you in a direction thinking you should, stand with them. And everybody's got a side. And so and I can see how other artists who haven't had those years of figuring that kind of base out first, how it plays.
Gosh, that's very impressive, I think, to have that sense of inner confidence and a surety that you can... Because I think, I said this actually in my previous episode that I did with Aaron Philander, because he was saying he did this Lemkis residency and he really wanted to push himself and to try and make work that maybe wasn't so commercially viable, works that moved and had sort of mechanical...
Yeah. I did a studio visit with him.
Did you?
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, both of the two young artists who were there.
Smisos, I think.
Yeah, I like the photographer a lot.
Yes. It was
He was
really
very
cool.
yeah.
But it's such a crucial point that we spoke about is there's this double-edged sword of being an artist, especially a young artist. If you need to sustain yourself and you do, I can imagine, find yourself thinking about the money and wanting to support yourself. And this goes back again to the project space, is why we need so many more of them, is
Exactly.
to create opportunities in these comfortable environments for artists
Absolutely.
to push themselves and explore. And so
We can only get there if we truly value their contributions to our society as artists, because we're not fully there yet. We have a small community who understands that level of importance of that art plays in community building and building a healthy society. Throughout time and space, we can see that. But there's still there's still not that level of appreciation that you have in other places that does get the funding. I'm talking about from a kind of governmental point of view.
yes.
So we still have a lot of it. So I do agree that Breakroom is an important part of this environment. And we hope that more spaces pop up at other people with kind of less selfish intention. But I'm also very privileged. Let's say, I've also done really well and in a position to share some of that.
So amazing about what you are doing is, of course, you've done really well and you're so successful, but I just think it's so striking, and I really felt it when I came and I did my first visit with you and we were going around the studio, and I knew, like, in my head when I'd read up about your practice in your studio, I was like, I know that you're a community-minded person, but I really can feel it when I'm here. You can just see it with all the people you work with, and I just think it's a very strong feeling that you give off. And I don't want to speak, I guess, to the detriment of human nature here, but it doesn't seem like that common a trait for people when they're very successful to think automatically, oh, it's
where I came from.
Give
it's
back.
The path I walked. It's the struggle I had as a kid. That kind of laid that foundation. And I also realized that I'm actually not going to be happy if I'm just kind of
absorbing yourself,
buying cars and whatever. I knew that is not going to fulfill me. I actually quite enjoy my family and close and people I get to teach and people I grew up with. I knew that my source of joy comes from that.
That's really amazing. And can we talk a little bit about some more specific traits or practices that you teach at Breakroom within that artist-gallery relationship? Because I think that needs suitable airtime.
Yes, like we said, it's in a similar way. If we take away the gallery and its reputation and what you think a gallery should be, because there is a little bit of a problem there with young artists coming in also having unrealistic expectations. I've had young artists very recently complain about how the gallery wouldn't give them money and pay, they expect the gallery to pay their rent and pay photography and do all these things, and not having yet built something up. You're still kind of quite a young artist. Maybe you've had some success and suddenly that goes to your head. I've seen that also. So there's one side of things where, as a young artist coming in, that unrealistic expectation is absolutely going to lead to disappointment, because you have to think of it in terms of the reality is that it's a business. It needs to make money, and the reality of it is that they cannot be everything you need them to be, just like your life partner would never be everything you dreamt it would be. But you realize the issues you might have with that person is things you can deal with and better or fix or work on, and the good parts are the ones that you're more interested in. I was earlier making a point where, I was speaking to you and I said with Jonathan, he always had this fatherliness, this natural male nurturer that I would see in the way he runs his gallery. I think he was a good guy that I never felt I needed to watch the numbers, that I needed to run after him for money, that he's going to run away with the money. Or when it came to being paid in the last 14 years, there was never a moment where I felt cheated financially in any way. It was fair. Although that I make that one statement, but there were moments where either of us didn't know any better. So initially, I would not claim for production from him. I would not ask him to pay for half of the production, even though he takes half of the profits or of the money. I would pay my own production. Now, this is a very important point. This is one of the most important points. If the gallery is going to sell a work of yours, they absolutely are responsible to reimburse you 50% of your production, whatever that is. absolutely.
See, I spend a lot of time in around the art industry talking to artists, and I don't even think that's like a common thread that
It's
I
not,
hear all
and
the
they're not going to
time.
offer it. Just like Jonathan didn't offer it, I had to fight for it at some point when I realized that was the case. It wasn't necessarily malicious. It's just a matter of we didn't know any better, and once we knew better, I fixed that and said, no, this is not right. The gallery absolutely has to pay for photography, for transporting the works around the world. These are part of the across the globe. This is primarily the relationship you have with the commercial gallery. There are certain things that they take responsibility for: photography, transporting the works, whether it's to a collector's house and back, doing all the kind of paperwork necessary and logistics, absolutely. Art fairs and these kinds of things. I've once heard of a story where a gallery local took some young artists to an international art fair in the Middle East, did well financially, sold a lot of these artists' work, more than I guess they expected, and then felt like that the artists can't make that amount of money, so they took a percentage off the top, not pay 50% production, and still then split what was left, because they felt that 30% should go towards the booth. That is absolutely wrong. A business is a business. The gallery is still a business. If the gallery is not making a profit at an art fair because the booth is so expensive, but you as an artist has made profit because it's not your responsibility to pay that booth. There's no justification to say now after the fact that you must now contribute to the booth. They even put these in contracts. They make the artist sign this into a contract. We give you a 2-year contract. That contract states that you will contribute to all sorts of things. I've heard of artists having to pay for their catering for these openings.
What?
Or getting a bill, or you don't know that. You don't even know. It's not even discussed. The opening has happened. Now they might feel that they didn't make enough sales. So now all of the expenses they want to pull back. And you get a bill, a surprise bill. And now suddenly you're in debt with this gallery. And moving forward, you're constantly having to cover this debt. And so
What? The catering? That is... Wow, you've shocked me there.
But it's only with young artists. They don't know. They're just too grateful and too excited to be part of the gallery. They don't know that that's...
Naively sign your life away there.
That you are being taken advantage of, or framing. It's not the artist. Well, framing is a little bit because you get photographers and, that can be negotiated. And there's nothing too clear. But typically the gallery, if I have a drawing that I sell, that the gallery will pay for that framing, And I have a person in my studio that calculates my production expenses, all the materials we spend on one particular day. So all of the works, if you go and speak to people, they all have a clipboard with a document related to each work, and they will log the hours worked on that work. Afterwards, all these documents related to a work is collected, a production expenses is then formed, and that production expense is then sent to the gallery. Once they sell the work, the first thing they pay back is 50% of that amount.
Okay.
That they give back, and then and then the rest gets split 50-50.
So what would you say, that's a lot of what the gallery is responsible for, but you as an artist, what would you say are your responsibilities to bring
show up? And the best advice I got was kind of to under promise and over deliver. I guess that's always been my way of doing things. I some of the things that I've seen in very cringy, I would say, is that there's been young artists I've seen come and go who has an idea in their head that they need to be a interesting in terms of their personality. So they start behaving
outside their work.
Yeah, well, like I guess Basquiat is the most famous of that example of this kind of tortured artist.
Yeah.
This young who makes exciting work, and he can do what he wants. He doesn't have to show up for an interview. He can, create chaos and be an arsehole, and these are acceptable behaviors because he is such a genius. And I feel like there's still these young artists coming into it trying to play up this bad behavior, thinking it makes them more interesting. It doesn't. It makes you an arsehole, and it makes you difficult to work with, and people don't want to deal with that. Yeah. So I think being professional is important, and showing up when you say you're going to show up, and being on time, and those basic human decent things to do. I've been to Venice, for instance, and other institutions, and they would say to me, just to my face, that they've had bad experiences with other South African artists, and South African artists had gained a reputation for bad behaviors, and I get to suffer too for other people who came before me.
But a little harsh to just categorize all South African artists into one pool.
But it's also the reality. If you've had the same experience with a few different South African people,
yes, yeah, you're just...
it just becomes, it's just the reality that people then walk away with a certain perception.
Oh my gosh, no, we can't have that.
No. And so I do feel like I've changed that a little bit.
Yes.
I'm a bit of a goody two-shoes.
Champion good behaviour. No, yeah, well, we're not going to criticise you for that. That's... You definitely have.
Well,
You definitely celebrate that.
And I have good people on my team that helps me keep a level of professionalism.
Yeah.
Like Monique and my partner told me, they're very good, and the rest of my team. But I think the building your reputation is important as someone. And people talk, the art world is connected to each other. It's insular. Like we talk a lot about other artists and other galleries and the behaviors we know about. There's a lot of talk.
No, I'm fully aware. It's a lot of chat.
And so those
people.
reputations travel. And you might not get an invite based on your reputation.
And that behavior.
I absolutely know that to be a fact. So it matters how you treat people, outside of... In fact, the stories I've heard, recently I did an in-store, and the people came to us and said, we wish all the installations working with artists were like that, because the last artists we work with, we weren't allowed to greet them or to speak to them.
What?
They wouldn't speak to us as technicians. They would only speak to the curator, and the curator had to come and relay information, even though we next to each other. We couldn't look at them. We couldn't talk to them. It's weird out there.
People are strange.
It's weird. So I just think treating people with decency and a bit of humanity goes a long way in...
Yes, definitely. And to conclude... And if we look forward with Breakroom specifically, and then also maybe more generally of what we'd like to see more of in Cape Town and South Africa. But what do you think are the next steps for Breakroom? Do you want to see it expand, or is it just going to continue and produce the fantastic work that it does produce?
Look, anything is possible. I think what's nice, what I very actively try to keep in my head for Breakroom is that we remain open, and that we don't necessarily... We're just responding to what we feel is needed in that moment. And so there's not big plans in terms of wanting to expand or wanting to turn this into something. I think it just needs to function as something that serves the community in a meaningful way. And honestly, in return, I also gain a lot out of the engagement, because otherwise I also just become a little island in
your silo,
in my little space, and I don't have you coming into the space. And today we had Hannah and all these different artists coming in, and I also gained a lot from them.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much. I feel like we have covered some very good ground here and spoken about some very important topics. So I'm really, really grateful for your time.
It's a pleasure. And I think this is fantastic, this conversation. I think you should continue to speak about this with other people and find more.
Investigate
without, let's point a finger without pointing fingers.
Pointing fingers without pointing fingers. But we're here to learn or to grow in a positive way.
No, but it's terrible when people get away with it.
No, it is.
And it's a good way to do it. We're not pointing fingers. It's not about...
Not about that. It's about promoting positive engagement and understanding.
If no one tells us, how are we going to know?
No, exactly. I agree. So hopefully we can spread the good word here.
We can do this again.
We do it 100 times to spread it. Thank you so much for listening to the Uptick podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please do follow along on Spotify and YouTube. And if you want to learn more about the South African art world in between episodes, then head on over to Instagram at the Uptick CPT.